Welcome to the Sharpe Way. Yes, I'm Larry Sharpe here at the Sharpe Way again here in Manhattan. Thank you for joining me. If you want to join the program tonight, call in at 573-427-5463. And of course, support us. Support us at patreon.com/SharpeWay. If you like what you hear tonight, which I know you will, help us out. Make that happen. And of course, always support and like our Facebook page, Instagram page, Twitter. It's all the Sharpe Way. Tonight, I am very lucky that I have a gentleman that I met about 2 years ago. Maybe 3 now. I don't remember. Two years ago, maybe. Actually, he was running for mayor of New York City as a Democrat. He is a tech entrepreneur, and he's the founder of Smart Cities, which I'm sure he will enlighten us about that today. It is the one, the only, Michael Tolkin. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you came. Look, the thing that gets me right away is you were a Democrat. You've told me you're no longer one. Please explain.
Yeah. So I haven't really been loyal to a party in any manifestation throughout my life, but I decided to run for mayor after the 2016 election to be more civically involved and to try to craft a vision for our city that I think has been missing.
Did you think you were going to win when you ran? I mean, I know you were excited. I mean, I met you during that campaign. You were very excited. Did you believe in your heart, I got a real shot? Were you thinking, I don't know. What were you thinking at the time?
Yeah, I did it because I saw a path. I saw a path to winning. I think that a lot of New Yorkers and a lot of Americans, frankly, are fed up with the lack of problem solving.
Yes,
and we
absolutely.
face such huge problems that the notion that we're not solving any of them is pretty ridiculous. And
John Oliver just did a show on this in his last week tonight about how to filibuster, make sure that nothing happens in the Senate. It's a common concept. Yep.
And it's, I come from the private sector,
Mm-hmm.
and in the private sector, we're much more efficient about things.
Oh, yes, indeed.
And so from that perspective, I thought, if we sort of jump ahead and start laying out solutions as if we were in office, as if we were governing the city,
right,
and present that to the people, that we would then win enough votes to take over and implement those solutions. And so that's what we did. We made our campaign about ideas.
Why? Because I know you had some ideas. When you and I talked back then, I was like, you're more libertarian than Democrat. I was even saying that back then. But how did the public respond, right? You're saying, here's these ideas, here's these concepts, here's how we actually solve something. How were New York City residents responding? Were they like, whatever, I don't care, you're crazy, oh my God, I love you? What were they saying?
It was universally positive.
Mm-hmm.
People were happy to hear that somebody was thinking about solutions, period. I think our particular brand of solutions, which is what I would characterize as being sort of private-public collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
And that spectrum varies depending on the issue, whether it needs to be a public sector approach, a private sector approach, or a hybrid of the two. Although I lean, private in terms of us pursuing solutions that don't require government involvement.
Sure.
I sort of lean libertarian in that way. So the response was really fantastic, and that's what kept me going. There were several milestones that we hit along the way. As someone who comes from the business world, I think about it as I would developing a product.
Sure.
So there are these stage gates, and at every stage you sort of reevaluate, is this going the way we want it to go? Do we still have a path to winning?
Right.
And at every stage we just kept going. We kept on getting the validation and the metrics that we were looking for, particularly online. Our digital audience was very engaged. We had millions of interactions online. And so that really drove us all the way to the end.
So
and what turns out...
Yeah, I was going to say, once it's over now, what happened to those people, right? They were excited, motivated, and going, oh my God, Tolkien's got the plan, right?
I don't know about that. We made it very clear that we weren't about me. It wasn't about Tolkien has the plan. It's here's a plan. Here are our ideas. Let's do that. Let's implement them together.
Should you have been more of a cult of personality?
No, I don't think so. I mean,
Trump's a cult of personality.
He is.
AOC kind of cult of personality.
They've been very successful. I don't think that is the solution. I don't think that's the path to unifying the country, is a cult of personality.
Okay.
And so what ended up happening is we were kicked out of the debates. We qualified for the debates, and then we were kicked out. And without any sort of explanation, we got a letter from the campaign finance board. You qualify for the debates, and then no podium.
Wow.
And yeah, never before happened. We've done a bunch of research, and we did a FOIL request to get documents from the government. And sure enough, there's a paper trail of a concerted, coordinated effort on behalf of the government and the Democratic Party, frankly, to keep us out of the debates.
Wow.
We still got 5% of the primary and came in third. And so what that said to me is, you know what? We were onto something.
Yes, absolutely.
We threatened people so much that they broke the law. There's a law that says if you take campaign finance funds, you have to debate your opponents. And instead of de Blasio saying, you know what, I'm not going to take public dollars for my campaign, I'm going to give it back because I don't want to debate this guy.
Right.
Instead, he took our money and still refused to debate me and used back channels to kick us out.
Are you saying de Blasio was not an honorable man? I am shocked. I'm shocked. So
Shocked me too. And,
yes.
and frankly, I got to say, throughout the campaign, especially running as a Democrat, I was very respectful of the incumbent. I was not out there to vilify him or tear him down. And our campaign...
Well, he was part of your party.
Part of our party, but even more than that, I think the campaign... No campaign should be about tearing down your opponent. It should be about elevating ideas.
Right.
And so I wasn't going to waste my time or my breath talking about the incumbent. And it's just unfortunate that he injected himself into the process in a way that I think made me question the integrity of our government and our institutions in a way that I never had before.
Well, I hate that it happened to you, but I'm glad you're coming our way. So I guess I have a mixed feelings on that. But let me give some background for some of the people here who are watching and listening. You know, New York City is the largest city in the nation, right? About 8.5 million people, give or take. But recently, it's been so bad that we're losing population. The last couple of years, New York City has actually been losing population, which has been rare, right? Generally speaking, New York City grows as a general rule. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger because it's a place for opportunity, right? As a general rule, people wonder, how can New York City function, even though it's basically a communist state in many ways, right? In many ways, it's very oppressive. Well, one, obviously, there's a 20 million metro person area for talent and for customers. Two, it's a mecca for talent, right? About 1/3 of New York City residents aren't born in America, and another 1/3 aren't born in New York City. So people come to New York City for talent, particularly female talent. I mean, if you're looking for female talent, hard to find a better city than New York City. I mean, it's just amazing talent pool here. And it's finance, right? Finance is here. But I think all of that's becoming less and less valuable because finance is moving, right? Basically because New York State crushes all new ideas. So finance is going where the ideas are going. Finance is going to California, San Francisco area, other areas like that's leaving. I think the idea of having to have your talent local is not as critical as it was. Your talent can be in other areas. And I think that customer base is also becoming a digital customer base, which means you don't have to have them physically here as much anymore. You add that with the oppressive ideas of how New York State, New York City have been, I think we have an issue
I'll add one more, which is automation is wiping out a lot of the jobs that previously existed, right?
That's correct. Yes, absolutely. So all of this is happening to include finance jobs, right? Right.
Yeah, absolutely. At all levels, you have people, bank tellers being replaced by ATMs, and then you have people who are coding and are developing systems that replace traders.
Yes, absolutely. All AI is replacing everybody.
Yep.
In a lot of places. So how do you fix that now? I mean, you said you've had solutions. When I ran for governor, mine were more statewide solutions. I had a couple in New York City, but most of mine were statewide. You've got, some ideas for cities specifically, right? New York City plus others, right? This smart cities idea is not just for New York City, correct?
Yeah.
So tell me, give me some good ideas to make us feel like, you know what? There's some hope.
Yeah, well, I think you kind of hit it on the head, which is that if you look at population and migration over the course of the last several decades and a lot of the research in terms of where we're headed, cities are only going to continue to grow.
Right.
And that's our future. That is how we have chosen to live, or the majority of Americans, about 82% of Americans have chosen to live in communal areas. And so from that standpoint, I think we need to reframe how we view our country. We have 82% of our people who like to live in cities. Well, let's think about a city-oriented approach to solving things like the climate crisis,
right,
like preempting and preparing for automation. And so smart cities does just that.
But
It is
I want to go to one premise, though. I'm not sure people like living in cities. I'm not sure that part's true. And the reason why I say it is, urbanization is one of the reasons why the country as a whole is shifting left. I bring it up often in my conversations. People talk about left and right, and I say the country is shifting left politically.
Yeah.
I mean by that, right? And one of the major reasons, not the only reason, but one of the major reasons is, as you mentioned, urbanization, right? But I don't think people like to live in cities. I mean, some do, but I think many of them are doing it because it's the only place for growth. After 2008, there really wasn't any real recovery outside of cities, right? Most of it was in the cities. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's 20 cities in America account for about 80% of all new jobs. So if you're looking for new work, either you're reinventing yourself as someone who's older or starting out new as someone who's younger, a city's kind of the place to go unless, like, your dad owns or your mom owns a couple businesses in your local community.
Absolutely.
You're probably going to a city.
It's where economic opportunity is. And so I don't know that like is the right word, but maybe prefer or chose
yes.
is a better word, in that, people prefer to live in cities because that's where their economic opportunity is, even if they don't actually like it.
There we
It's
go.
too dense or too congested. And I think our challenge is to make cities a place that people want to live, that is custom designed for the era in which we live.
Okay.
And by that, I mean, we have all these amazing technologies that are just around the corner. Automation technologies, artificial intelligence, robotics, self-driving cars. We should be designing our cities to embrace those technologies to increase the quality of life for the people that live in our cities. And
what I see in New York, though, is the forced bike lanes, right? The bike lanes that many people, I guess if you ride a bike, good for you, I assume. But I look at it anecdotally, and I see, when I hear what you're saying, the fear pops up immediately, right? Because I think that means now when there's Mayor Tolkin, right, when that happens, he's going to come into my local neighborhood and force me to have, I don't know, driverless car lanes and take away all my parking, right? Which is what I see when I look at the bike lanes in my neighborhoods today in New York City.
So, it's more of a process that I advocate for, an approach, than an end solution. I have my own ideas about what the future holds based on the trends that we see today and based on the technologies that exist today. But I don't really think that bike lanes are the solution. I think they are one tiny element, one tiny component of a much broader, much more comprehensive set of solutions to our shared challenges. And so when I think of the future, I think, okay, well, maybe bike lanes should be a part of that, because obviously a big part of the urban population prefers to ride bicycles to work. I think that pedestrianization is definitely a part of it, and bringing the streets back into the public realm. I think that self-driving vehicles are part of the future. I also think that people should have the ability to move around freely, right? And the question is, how do we accommodate that? How do we accommodate that sort of personal freedom? I think
And then how do we decide on that too, right?
And how do we decide on that?
That worries me always, right? In 8.5 million people, right? For those of you who may not know, this is a very dense city also, right? It's very dense. There's parts of New York City where 1 square mile, there are 60,000 people in 1 square mile. Right? There's some massively dense areas. How do we decide this, right? How do we decide whether it's a bike lane or, as you mentioned, we're making it more friendly to pedestrians? How do we decide this?
Research. The same way we design any other product in the world, from your iPhone to your smartwatch to your headphones, we research the use cases and we see what people enjoy doing, what's the path of least resistance or least friction, what technologies we have at our disposal, and we integrate them into solutions that have buy-in by virtue of being bred out of the research.
Can you walk me through an example? Real or not real? Just walk me through an example.
Of an example
of that, which you just said, doing some research, deciding what the right thing is, and then implementing that right thing. Even if it's something you make up, just conceptually show me how that looks. Because what I see in New York City now is the second I say I want insert thing here, that's when the lobbyists come in. that's when either Democrats or Republicans decide it's their issue. It then becomes a wedge issue. Then they decide how crony capitalists can get their hands on it, and then their friends get the contracts. That's what I see New York as being as the norm. Help
And
me to walk
you
me
just
through
sort
that.
of loaded up a bunch of
I did.
of problems.
I absolutely did.
The notion of cronyism and crony capitalism is something that this plan Smart Cities that we are proposing addresses as well, which
Mm-hmm.
is that we need private sector involvement that is representing the people, not
Okay.
private interests. And today we have a private sector that's dominated by individual private interests,
Mm-hmm.
but there's no private sector, or I shouldn't say there's no overarching private sector corporation, if you will, that is looking out for the rest of us,
Okay.
for the people that don't own stocks or don't have ownership of these big companies. So to go back to your question, I think an example of that would be how we design the metro systems or the mass transit systems of the future.
Okay.
Today, we're making repairs. I mean, we've had a lot of trouble getting even Band-Aids put on these subways.
I know.
But
it's horrible.
we're making these repairs a little bit here and there. But we need to take a step back and we need to understand how people are going to be moving around the city in the future. So we need to look at trends like automation. People are no longer going to need to go to an office space or to a retail space where they're working because now robotics have replaced those jobs. They're going to be doing jobs perhaps in the creative industries, which is going to be a growth sector for the economy. So maybe now we have many more filmmakers and photographers and musicians and far fewer retail workers. Well, that changes the entire dynamic of the city, how people move around, where they need to move to. So let's start looking at the future use case of how people are going to need to move around the city. And that's a starting point for designing a process or designing a system around that behavior,
So you're
as
saying
opposed
that
to
the
saying,
behavior-
let's put the system in place and hope that everyone fits their behavior into it.
So you're saying I don't want to necessarily shove all my subways downtown because maybe Wall Street isn't the place people are working anymore. Maybe it's an entertainment industry because people are joining bands, as you mentioned, or something like that, or going to the common workspaces, the WeWorks of the world.
Exactly. And so we have a change in how people move around the city, and therefore a change in how we should design our systems of mobility. So by way of example, we may say, you know what? Point-to-point transit like Uber and rideshare services is a really great way of moving around the city. People love it. The problem is traffic congestion
Sure.
and pick up and drop off and so on and so forth. Well, if we agree that and I'm not suggesting this is the answer, but
Right.
if there is a solution in that we really like point-to-point transit, well, then let's think about a mass transit point-to-point system, which requires us to rethink our pickup and drop-off areas, to rethink our mass transit stations, if you will. It requires us to rethink our tunnels. Maybe instead of having the mass transit system that we have today, which is the subway system, we put in underground highways and have free roving vehicles that are all automated on the same grid. So there are things that and again, these are sort of
Yeah, I get you. Yep. I love
extrapolations
the idea.
based on
Yep.
hypotheses.
I have to go to two spots here where I'm concerned. Two spots.
Yep, go.
Spot number one is who's the we in decision, and then who's the we in paying for it, right? Because I love the idea of underground highways, and it's amazing. And the idea of driverless cars underground, amazing. My worry is that's a lot of money, right? Someone's going to pay for that, right? And I hope it could happen. Someone's going to have to pay for that. Someone's going to own it or not own it or rent it or lease it or something like that. Those are my two words. Who says, yes, we do this? And then who gets the check?
Great questions. So when I refer to we, I'm typically referring to we the people.
Okay.
So it is all of us.
Okay.
We own the country, and we have been left out of the conversation, right? We
Too
vote
often.
Too often. We vote, and then a bunch of people get into a room and make decisions on our behalf, and then typically do things that aren't in our best interest, or aren't in our collective best interest. So one of the unique aspects of the Smart Cities plan is that we want to create a corporation that is owned by the people, that functions on behalf of the people, but has the same weight and has the same might that any other corporation would have, whether it be Google, Alphabet, or Amazon, or Facebook.
So the corporation is owned by the people. And is that citizens? Is that residents? People registered to vote? Who gets a vote, right, in this organization?
So we've laid out a blueprint, and in our blueprint we have members of the community, the ecosystem, which are residents or citizens of the country.
Two separate things.
Two separate things, not for me to dictate.
Okay.
It's
So
more
local community can decide if it's citizens or residents.
I think collectively that's a discussion we need to have as a country, right?
Okay.
It touches on immigration policy, it touches on a bunch of things. And
Would you accept it being more local? In other words, Queens says we want residents, but Bronx says we want citizens. Jersey says we want citizens, but Staten Island says we want residents, or whatever combination. Is that in your eyes okay, or no? Is that unfair?
Absolutely. I think at the end of the day, we want to delegate down to the most micro level, the local level, as many decisions as possible. So we want to empower communities and empower neighborhoods with the architecture, with the economic toolkit to rebuild their communities with all the efficiencies that the private sector currently has. And we want those decisions to be made on a local level. How the economy is distributed, how capital is allocated for investment, and so on and so forth. Which leads to the second part of your question: how do you pay for it?
Sure.
As a company, we can both make money and spend money, and so I view this as being an investment. Meaning a mass transit system of the future is an investment in our city's infrastructure, which is an investment in our future economy. And so long as we have a participation in the upside of that economy, we will benefit from making that investment. And so part of the plan is to have, a marketplace where we can sell goods and services.
So does that mean taxpayers put the money up front and then get paid back? Is that what you're saying?
Nope, we the people. So we will sell basically a cryptocurrency. We'll develop a cryptocurrency and sell what we call savings coins.
Okay.
Just like back in the day, the war effort was funded through savings bonds. Savings coins direct from the people. They'll be interest bearing, and they'll also be used to make investments in our infrastructure and the development of these businesses and services.
So if I have more money, I can decide to buy more savings coins. What'd you call it?
Savings coins.
Savings coin. I can buy more savings coins. But if I'm not wealthy, I don't have to buy any of them.
Correct.
But I still get profit?
So the way the company is structured is we believe that every individual deserves 5 rights.
Okay.
Economic rights. In the age of automation, when there's going to be an abundance of surplus. So we call it CHIEF.
Okay.
C stands for care, H for home, I income, E education, and F freedom.
Okay.
And this set of companies, this confederation of private enterprises that are working on behalf of the people, will generate sufficient economic surplus to fund and distribute those benefits. How that gets done and where the money comes from is open to discussion. So I personally believe that it should be done on a localized basis, meaning dollars earned in Bronx Little Italy in the Bronx go back to the Bronx Little Italy community. Dollars earned in a different district or neighborhood, go back to that neighborhood. And so we cultivate basically these companies that are neighborhood owned as opposed to one overarching corporation.
Aren't you going to, particularly in New York City, you do something like that? I liked everything you talked about. I'm being a bit of a nudge on this last piece here.
Yeah.
Because particularly in New York City, you do that, you're going to have people come to South Bronx and say, why does Upper West Side get so much? Right? And your answer, of course, is, well, they put more money in. But I'm not going to like that if I'm from the Bronx, right? Well, your point was you want the money that comes in to, go back to the community.
Right.
But someone who's got more money in the Upper West Side of Manhattan is probably going to be able to put more money in than someone who lives by Yankee Stadium. Right?
Sure. So I'm talking about the distribution of benefits of surplus. In terms of investment, I think that needs to be done on a national level across all cities and across all neighborhoods. So your neighborhood's investment should not be contingent on whether or not you were successful in terms of generating economic growth. That upfront investment in terms of your mobility infrastructure, in terms of your streetscapes, in terms of the new economy and our investment in the new economy. And I typically refer to the new economy as the fetch economy: food, entertainment, tech, care, and home.
Can you say that again? Fetch, do this one more time.
The fetch economy. So it's food, entertainment, tech, care, and home. Okay. Those are the jobs of the future because those are the jobs people want to do. Everything else will be automated away with AI and robotics, but the jobs people want to do will stay. We'll figure out a way to do them. And so these are jobs that are either creativity or curiosity based or compassion based. People like to care for each other.
They're emotion based.
They're emotion based. And So from that standpoint, we need to be investing to cultivate that economy across neighborhoods. So my answer to you would be, in the South Bronx, we should be developing neighborhoods that have really strong identities, that have wonderful restaurants and culture and entertainment that are representative of the people who live there, and we should have mobility infrastructure that allows others to visit and spend money there. And in doing that, we sort of cultivate these local ecosystems where there's money coming in, money being redistributed to the neighborhood, all of whom share in the boon of economic growth.
I love it. Well, guys, if you actually want to join the program, please make sure you give us a call, 573-427-5463. And of course, support. If you like what we're doing, we're talking about, go to patreon.com/Sharpe Way. We have a call. We have Laura from North Carolina. Laura, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm coughing for some reason, but I'm okay otherwise.
Oh, I'm glad.
Yes. So what's going on?
I have a question about automation.
Okay.
So, you guys were talking about like machines replacing storefronts.
Yeah.
And I understand people being replaced in factories, but I'm thinking about when I go shopping, I love interacting with people at the store. And if you have machines at the store, why don't I just stay home and buy it off the computer? Isn't that going to hurt the economy in the long front? Like,
it's a good
have
question.
you thought about that?
Michael, you want to touch that?
Sure. It's a great question. I think at the end of the day, we're going to see an evolution of the economy. It's not that all high-touch retail is going to go away. We may have boutique stores or department stores that do have human labor and people who enjoy doing that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have the ability to do a job that exists today that you enjoy, even if it can be automated in the future. And so I would say, an example that comes to mind would be bookstores. You can buy all your books online. You can even get them. You can get ebooks, and yet there are still books or bookstores rather out there, and they're just a little bit. There are fewer of them than there used to be. So I'm not sure if that 100% answers your question, but I think that there's definitely room for high-touch retail environments. When I talk about trends, I talk about sort of the general movement away from high-touch retail environments.
Well, there's something else here to think about too, right? If you look at malls as an example today, when I was a kid, a mall was almost always anchored by some type of large department store, right? A Sears or a Nordstrom's or something like that was the norm. Now, often the norm is some form of, as you mentioned, entertainment, right? It's a Dave and Buster's, or it's a water park, or it's something like that, right? As a general rule, retail is shifting, I think. If you want to be successful in retail, as a general rule, you have to have one of three things or a combination. One, you have to be an experience. Right, the Apple Store is an experience, right? Dave and Buster's is an experience, right? Chuck E. Cheese is an experience, right? You've got to be something to where I can experience something. A movie, right, is an experience. Something like that. That people will go to. It's a destination spot, good retail. Second, you got to have it to where it's a showroom, right? Where you find a lot of smart stores now they're not stocking everything in every size, in every color. They stock every size. Then you have an iPad or something and they press the button and go, this will be delivered to your home tomorrow morning, free shipping. So it becomes a showroom, right? That becomes valuable also. And a third thing you find is something that it's really hard to get online. So something like haircuts, nail salons. Tough to get your nails done over the internet, right? Real tough. So those types of things I think you'll still see. But I think to Michael's point, for those of us who still want to go, there will be something there. But if you look at the younger generation, many of them don't want to go shopping. Many of them are completely happy doing everything online. Many of them don't actually want to get a customer service rep. And it's a cultural problem that we have now. Because guys my age, we expect when we call someone that someone's going to answer the phone and say, hi, my name is Bob. How can I help you? Not press 1 if you blah, blah, blah. Press 2 if we don't want to hear that, right? But some of the youngsters, they don't even want to call. They only want to go online, do the chat or press the button, and they're satisfied. There really is, I think, a cultural shift also that we have to deal with. I don't think it'll go away either, to be clear. I just think it'll shift into one of those three as the norm. Not easy to get online, some type of experience, or some form of showroom.
I think it's a really good way of framing it.
Yeah. So, I mean, you like shopping and interacting with people. What you find lots of people who like that doing is they do it online. And this may sound crazy, but if you look at some of the most popular games that kids play online now, they're social games. Right? When I was a kid playing video games, and I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and we had video games, but usually you played either by yourself or with the kid who came over who physically sat next to you, and we both had joysticks and we played a game together. And that was the only way to play video games. There was no other way. Now you find people who play video games with friends who they've never seen in person. It's all done online, right? Or my daughters, one of my daughters is 15, the other one is 9. My 9-year-old will see her friend in school and then leave school and play video games together online, right? On their tablets for hours, right? During the summertime, they were playing for hours, right? So they play together. My daughter and I will play video games together online in the same room, right? We're literally sitting at a dinner table, and we both have a tablet, and we're playing a video game together, talking about the video game, right? I remember my daughter, when she was younger, my oldest daughter, when she was younger, I saw her watching YouTube, and she was watching some guy watch someone else play a video game. I want to say it again. She was watching someone else watch someone play a video game. And I asked her, I said, why are you doing it? I'm curious, why? And she said, when the guy is talking about the video game, I feel like he's talking to me. So I feel like we're watching the video game together. That to me was like, that's community for kids. That's something I would never have done as a kid, right? I thought, that's stupid. I would have never done as a kid. But that becomes the norm. I don't know. Did we answer your question, Laura? Or did we dodge too much?
No, it makes sense. We have to figure out what they can't do, what the computers can't do, and then do that.
Absolutely.
Well, I think, that's a great point, which is make the assumption that the computers and the robots can do anything. That anything we can program, they can do. So it's just a matter of time, right? Whether it's 5 years out, 10 years out, or 50 years out, assume that at some point we'll be able to automate it away. What are the things that we actually want to do? And I think that's really what you're getting at. There are people out there who want to sell you something in person. And there are people who want to be sold something in person. And it's just going to be a smaller portion of the overall economy.
Well, yeah, and I look at the way I look at that is bands, right? For most people, you can, if you want to, listen to most music electronically. You don't have to have someone sit in front of you and play guitar. Not required.
Great example.
Right? But man, people love going to concerts and festivals and watching people play music. And we don't have to. You can literally watch those people on YouTube or press a button and the music comes out of your iPad or your phone or your insert thing here, your car, whatever. You don't have to.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is
But we do.
You're not going to have an automated Broadway,
Exactly. Yes. And even though you literally could, like someone could animate Broadway and you could have a completely computerized Broadway.
And I think Broadway's a great example of how, we have movies, right? Movies in many ways replaced live theater.
Yeah.
And yet live theater still thrives. It's
Yes.
just a smaller portion of the overall entertainment economy. And just to go back to what you were saying about live concerts, I think what you end up seeing is that just like with live theater, technology augments the experience. So now you have these huge jumbotrons, and most people when they go to a concert aren't looking at the stage. They're looking at the jumbotron.
Yes.
But they're there for the social experience, for
Yes.
everything else that you can't, all the intangibles that you can't possibly replicate digitally or electronically.
It's funny you said that. It's one of the reasons, a little off topic, but it's one of the reasons why I like boxing. And you may say, well, why would I like boxing? How's this match? I was never really a massive boxing fan. But boxing, a lot of my friends liked boxing. So we would get together to watch a boxing match. I didn't care about the boxing match. I cared about the experience of hanging out with my friends, right? Boxing was an excuse to hang out with my buddies. So I'd go and hang out with my buddies and watch boxing. And now I'm a big boxing fan. But I didn't start that way. I was hanging out with my buddies. So we were hanging out. It was an excuse to be together. I didn't care who won the match. I couldn't even name the people who were boxing.
But I bet that's the same for almost everyone with every sports team, every fan ever, right? It's just like, why do people become fans?
Exactly.
It's for the social interaction.
Absolutely. So great. Thank you for calling, Laura. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, guys, look, if you like what you're hearing, do us a favor, support us and follow us on all of our social media. Follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, follow us on YouTube, follow us on Facebook. The Sharpe Way, we're trying to bring something important and valuable, real conversations with people who have real issues to make some real impact. And of course, we need you to support us financially. This is not free at all. Patreon.com/SharpeWay. Give whatever you can. If you want to be part of the program, give us a call. 573-427-5463. I want to grab another call if I could. It's Craig. How are you, Craig? Craig, are you there?
Yes.
Hey, what's going on, my friend? How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. What's going on?
Oh, just giving you a call. I heard Michael. Michael is his name, right?
Yes.
That you have on tonight?
Yes, Michael
Yes,
Tolkin.
Michael. I heard him talking about what was going on as far as kind of redistributing with his plans for employee-owned cooperatives. It sounded like for business and stuff like that.
Oh, I didn't
sounded
know
like
if it was that. It's good, though. Go ahead. Keep going.
Well, you guys were just talking about it. It sounded like you brought up the situation where, Manhattan is going to be a little more nice, maybe than the Bronx, right? They're going to have more cool things.
Right.
So then it would be the federal government's job to step in and kind of level the playing field. Is what it sounded like Michael was saying. I was just wondering if you could expound on that. Like, who gets to decide who does that? You know, who has that power?
That's a great question. So, Michael, are you talking about basically employee-owned corporations, and if one corporation is worse than the other, does the federal government come in to do this?
So not employee-owned, but I think a co-op is an interesting template or paradigm to think about. It's resident-owned.
Okay.
And so as we think about on a national scale, it's nation-owned. Nation-owned enterprises. And when I say nation-owned, not government-owned, people-owned. So totally independent of government. Our plan has zero government intervention or interaction. It's all designed to address the challenges, the twin challenges of our day, which are automation and climate change, to address those two challenges without requiring any government involvement. And so to answer your question about wealth distribution, I don't think about wealth distribution so much as investment distribution and making sure that we are adequately investing in the infrastructure of our cities universally. And I don't think that one city should come at the expense of another. I think wherever there are people, you have the potential for economic growth. It's formulaic. The more we invest in our infrastructure alongside our people, the more economic output we'll get in the future. And so from that standpoint, I take a much longer term view, which is how do we set the table in every single neighborhood, not necessarily the same table. So I don't want this notion of homogeneity to pervade the plan, but if we give people the inputs into developing a healthy economy, they will go and they will take care of their own and they will take care of themselves. And so from that standpoint, there needs to be a vehicle to fund the investment in every single neighborhood in America, and that's what we plan to do with smart cities.
Did I answer your question, Craig, or no?
I guess I'm just not quite familiar enough with what smart cities is. I mean, I think I'm grasping at that as sort of the business and it's owned cooperatively by the community, and then profits from that go into your infrastructure, which is totally separate from government by the sounds of it.
That's exactly right. And so I continue to refer to smart cities. We put out a white paper, which I'm sure we can link to afterward. But on a national scale, so that's on a local level. On a national scale, the way to think about it is a confederation of private enterprises that are collectively operating on behalf of the people for the common good.
So I do have a concern, right? If you're in New York City, two concerns now with this. Number one, culture, just a cultural concern, right? In New York City, we have a very transient population. Right? People live in a certain area for literally, 3 months and leave. And in the same community where I've got people who are living for 3 months and bailing, I got people who've been there for 30 years, right? And everything in between. I have people who speak different languages, come from different countries, all of that. So my worry is, how do we manage who owns what, if that makes any sense, right? Who gets back what, whatever that is, with that much turnover. I mean, companies have trouble figuring this out, right? And now we're talking about a county like Queens that has 2.1, I think, million people in it, something like that. Brooklyn has, what, 2.3 million? It's a massive endeavor, right? It's a concern. And the second part of that is, how do I then shift the culture of we don't do that like government does that? Just not logically, right? Logically, anyone could do the thing, right? I'm saying the culture of, no, that's not what government does that, right? We call de Blasio and he then brings his people to do this thing, whatever this thing is. How do we make that culture shift on top of it?
I think we're just going to need to get there by necessity. We're just not seeing the kind of change and problem solving that we need coming from the government. And no matter how much effort is being put into nudging them in the right direction. And so, to your question about culture and how we sort of manage these things on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis, I would say, this company or set of companies will operate just like any other set of companies, just like Amazon or Alphabet or Microsoft. These are $1 trillion or near $1 trillion companies. They're very, very big and very complicated in their structures. And yet the private sector has actually given us a lot of best practices that we can utilize with our own private corporation, in quotes.
So do we then elect a chairman of the board and we elect a CEO? Is that how that works? Does someone select a CEO? Is there an election like the the president or the mayor?
Exactly. So our process, as articulated in the white paper, which again is a blueprint, is that members would vote on a board of directors. The board of directors will be responsible for selecting executives across our enterprises of the people, and at any moment we can have a new referendum. Okay. And the idea is that we want to empower people directly, direct democracy, as much as possible to make these kinds of critical decisions and get things like healthcare and infrastructure out of the hands of bureaucrats and politicians, people who are not necessarily operating with the clearest minds, and put it directly in the hands of the people.
So, Craig, did he answer your question?
I like all of these things. My only question is, how are you going to do it? How are you going to get the government to let you do it?
That was my next. You were thinking the way I was thinking, Craig. This sounds like competition, and monopolies do not like competition.
That is a great point. And the only way we're going to do it is by doing it. That's one of the reasons why we're not going through a think tank and we're not going and developing philosophy. This is a very concrete plan. It's 9 pages, so anyone can understand it. And we just published it last week, and we're going to be evangelizing it across the country. Thanks. We'll be evangelizing it across the country, and the more support we get, the more public pressure there is on the government to allow us to do these things. And when I say allow us, we're no different from any other company. So anything that Alphabet's doing today, we can do. Anything that Amazon's doing today, we can do. The question is, when we talk about things like mass transit infrastructure, which is completely government run, well, the best way to get around that is to put together a plan with financing that the community supports. And when I say the community in New York City, it's the New York City community. It's the city overall. If we can do those things and we take it to the government, they're going to have a really hard time shooting it down. And that's, the way in many cases the private sector has worked, right? They come with a plan, they come with their renderings and their financing models and so on and so forth, and they get stuff done. So you look at Diller Park on the west side. Barry Diller wanted to fund this park, came with the renderings, had some trouble. He still got it through.
Yeah, I see it. I guess along with what Craig is saying, I mean, New York City's budget, if I'm not mistaken, is about $95 billion or something like that. It's some huge number like that. Am I about right? 95 billion? It's in that area. That's larger than countries, right? I mean, it's a huge budget. If now we're going to say we need smart cities and we need these corporations to do stuff, 2 parts. One, aren't I literally saying, wow, we're throwing a lot of money away. If we have to spend $95 billion and we still require smart cities, right? We still need this plan. Wow. And not just that, $95 billion in New York City, there's a lot of people who make their money off New York City.
That's very true.
A lot of people make them living off New York City.
I'll go back to my first statement, which is that the economy's changing. It's changing faster than we realize, and it's going to change faster than at any point ever in history. This will be the fastest industrial revolution that humanity has ever faced.
So do you think that literally the New York City government will be like, wow, we are not ready for this at all. We're laying off 40,000 people. Like that? Is that what you're saying? Like that amount of speed? Like, wow, we can't do this. You're all fired. Is that the type of thing you're talking about?
I don't know that that's going to happen in the public sector, because there are more levers that the public sector can pull to navigate that. I think it is going to happen in the private sector. I think you're going to see mass layoffs in the private sector seemingly overnight. And that's my biggest concern, is that we're not preparing adequately for this transition. And there's no way that, the portion of the population that's currently in jobs that will be automated away, about 45% of the population, that those people are all going to be retrained overnight for new jobs. It's just not going to happen. So we need to be thinking about social safety net programs. We need to be thinking about how we distribute income, so that I believe it's a human right at this point in modern civilization. You deserve an income to pay for food, clothing, essentials. And therefore, we need to figure out a way to distribute income fairly. Our plan has a universal basic income component to it. And so to answer your question on a long-term basis, yeah, I want to cut government. I want to cut your taxes down to as close to zero as possible. And we want to replace that with a program that is universal basic income plus free healthcare, plus free housing if you need it, or affordable housing, and plus free education. And we should be able to...
That's a massive thing you just threw at me just there. You just went,
That's
smart
a lot
city
of stuff for free.
I know, that's a lot. You threw a lot at me on that one.
Well, that's chief, right? It's care, home, income, education, freedom.
I know, I love it. I'm just saying, you were like, we're going to do this thing, and now everything is free. That's awesome.
Well,
and here's a check. I love it. That's amazing.
Not everything, just the ingredients to live.
Okay, you're right. Gotcha.
Most things.
Just most things. I love it.
No,
All right.
I think it's actually important to, when I talk about AmeriCoin, our proprietary cryptocurrency, that will be the mechanism to distribute income, which will be usable at the enterprises that we own. So we're not distributing US dollars where you can go and take it to the private sector and somebody else is making money off of our universal basic income program. Our basic income program is a fully enclosed program, meaning every dollar that comes in will be spent at one of our merchants.
So your UBI is not cash.
It's a form of cash that's not usable in the private sector broadly.
Wow. Now I'm torn, right? Because part of me loves that idea. There's a part of me that goes, that's amazing, because we're not giving taxpayer dollars out, right? So that part I love. But then not being able to put the money into the economy makes me feel like, don't I want to put money into the... So I'm kind of torn on this one. Help me get through this one.
So, okay, great. So let's just use an example. If you say, you know what, I really want more than just the food and clothing and essentials and whatever I can get at USA Enterprises, at this, collective of companies, get a job.
Okay.
Get a job, earn an income the old-fashioned way, and you will have your disposable income to pay for things in the private sector. But I don't think that we should be subsidizing the private sector when there's so much need that has yet to be met.
So I'm kind of creating, if I get this right, an entirely separate ecosystem.
Correct.
Right? So almost a separate economy.
Exactly.
A separate economy and a separate government.
Correct.
So we have the regular government. We have the regular economy. Then we have what'd you call it? USA what? I'm sorry? USA
Enterprises.
USA Enterprises economy and the USA Enterprise government.
Correct.
We have two governments.
And when you say the USA Enterprises government, it's really a thin layer, right? It's the people and then the folks that are managing these enterprises, which will be hand-selected for their expertise, knowledge, and abilities, not voted on based on popularity.
So who selects them? Hold on, wait a minute. I thought this was
who
direct
gets to select them?
I thought this
So
was direct democracy.
under our plan, we select a board, the Smart Cities board is selected by or voted on by the members, and then that board is responsible for selecting executives.
Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so it's like a company would do it.
Exactly.
Same idea. Okay, gotcha. But
exactly the same, except instead of the investors voting on it on the basis of their ownership,
got it.
members vote equally.
Got it. Oh, okay. That's actually a better plan. I got you. So it will be as if the Senate wasn't actually the Senate, but instead it's selected people to run the government.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, so different mindset. Okay, interesting. All right, Craig, are you good?
I'm good. I expected to call in and be angry, but I'm happy.
There we go. See, Michael, you did it, man. Whew. Tolkin has the answers. I love it. It's awesome, and it's true. All right, Craig, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, guys, if you want to join our program, 573-427-5463. And as always, please, if you like what you're hearing, support us. Patreon.com/Sharpe Way. And of course, always like us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. We're here. And of course, Patreon. All right. Well, look, he gave you some serious questions, and the idea of a almost like a second government. This also makes me feel that while I like the idea, I worry that the current government is going to be like, okay, look, this Michael guy's got to go. I mean, they already tried to stop you here locally, right? So maybe there's some goons outside right now in the studio ready to you're a criminal. Maybe that's about ready to happen now. But I mean, seriously,
but you know what?
I'm joking, but I'm also serious. I'm both.
Yeah, there's nothing illegal or impractical about what we've proposed because there are companies already doing it, right? Google and Facebook and Apple and Amazon, these are massive companies that are essentially governments, and they're developing their own cities. You know, Alphabet is developing a city in Toronto, Sidewalk Labs, or Sidewalk Toronto is the name of the city. And all the big tech companies are thinking about the future of cities. So in many ways, there's already precedent and there's already a paradigm. We are now taking what the private sector has created and saying, you know what? You guys did a pretty good job of it. You did a pretty good job of creating these mass corporations that are, capable of being their own governments. We're going to replicate that on behalf of the people. And the net effect of this is that we're actually applying the sentiment of free market principle to government. We're saying, look, yes, we are a competing government in some ways. We are going to take over some of the functions that you typically associate with municipal governance. That puts pressure on government to do a better job.
Sure. No. I love the breaking the monopoly piece, right? When I was running for governor, one of my biggest pieces was I wasn't about abolishing a bunch of stuff. I was about creating, secondary options for people to choose so that either government gets better or government becomes obsolete.
Exactly.
Either one I'm okay with, right? Either one is fine. But the government is still there for people who say, I don't want to try Larry Sharpe's newfangled thing. I want to stay in the old way. I don't want to make a change. So the safety net isn't removed, right? And I feel like you're doing a similar thing in this case.
Yeah. We're trying to put forward the best system, irrespective of what exists today, working around, whatever challenges exist. But, the beauty of the American economy is that it is a free market economy, that anyone should be able to do anything. And
in theory.
In theory.
Yes.
And unfortunately, we've had too many bad actors take over the system, and we don't have enough good actors acting on behalf of the rest of the people. That's really, at the end of the day, if you have a free market system and you have a population that is empowered, that population should take care of itself.
Got it. Okay. So look, when we put all this together, how does this then translate into other international things, right? Does this local city with the AmeriCoin?
AmeriCoin, yeah.
AmeriCoin, can foreign governments be involved in this? Can they buy the AmeriCoin and invest in New York City or invest in Toronto? Or what that would be America. Invest in Boston? Or is this only, again, residents/citizens are the only ones who can invest?
No, this is a currency that is like any other crypto. It would be open to all investors. And in theory, yes, foreign governments could, invest in our infrastructure. There's I don't see much conflict of interest in terms of others helping us to get back on our feet again.
Because in reality, the voting is still the same, right? So even if I have a bazillion AmeriCoin, I still get one vote if I live in Queens.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter how many AmeriCoin I happen to purchase or own.
Exactly.
And I can use it internally.
Exactly.
Okay. Last piece in this specific...
But I want to go back to that international piece real quick, which is that I also view this as being a foundation for much deeper economic collaboration. So I think AmeriCoin is a starting point there's no reason why other countries, other cities can't adopt their own version of that using the same platform, using the same underlying blockchain and technology to create something similar in their areas. And so what works in the US should export. It should work. It should scale to other cities as well.
So now even the dollar is going to be in trouble. Everyone's gonna be using Americoin for the new way of buying oil now. See, there we go.
Well, I think it taps into a trend that a lot of people have been spending a lot of time studying, which is this notion of digital currencies and borderless currencies and moving away from fiat-based currencies. But yeah, I think that we need to be having these conversations.
Okay, good. All right. So the other piece, though, the last piece of this world is this is all about cities. I love it. Our rural areas are suffering. Is there an answer in this plan for smart cities that helps the people, who are farmers, who want to live in more rural areas, and not just farmers, but people who don't want, who've said, I know, rural life is tough, but I like rural life and I'm going to live there even if it's tough because I don't want to live in a city, even though there's more opportunity in the city. Is there part of this plan that helps that part of America?
Absolutely. The same rights, Chief, apply to everyone. So I believe every American deserves care, a home, income, education, and freedom. And the question is, what's your nearest city? Whatever your nearest big city is or your nearest city, that will be the source of your income. But everyone should be taken care of under this plan.
So does that mean that in the long run, cities will not be as valuable? Because if I can live anywhere, right, as long as I'm connected with my closest city, right? Maybe Omaha is the biggest city next to me, but I want to live 100 miles outside of Omaha, 150 miles outside of Omaha. If I still get my cryptocurrency, maybe I leave Omaha. Maybe Omaha becomes a small town and everyone
freedom
moves
of
out.
mobility. I believe in that. I believe that people should be free to move around and to explore new places, whether it's on a temporary basis, travel, or on a permanent basis. I think that is a luxury that is today, something that most people can't afford. They can't afford to travel the world. They can't afford to live in multiple cities or, over the course of many years, multiple cities. So if that's something people want to do and we can empower that, great. And we should design our cities around it. So one of the other aspects of our plan is a nationwide network of high-speed trains and hyperloops so that we connect all cities in the contiguous U.S. in under 5 hours. That's the goal, is to get is a transit system that links all of our cities in under 5 hours.
This is decades, or no?
A decade.
It's a decade.
It's a decade worth of massive, massive investment in our infrastructure. But it's one that I think will yield tremendous economic benefits.
With a current debt of $22 trillion. How do you get America to decide to do that? How do you get America to say, yep, you know what? Let's go into debt with literally, we're bombing, 6 or 7 countries now, something like that, with foreign wars still going on. How do you get America to focus inward like this? I mean, we have literally a bunch of wedge issues that are all distraction, look over there, while this is collapsing around us, right? I think your point's a valid one. How do I get people? I mean, again, this makes sense. I like the concepts, right? I like the conversations. But then how do I get Americans to actually sit down and go, you know what? Let me sit at my dinner table and talk to my family about this.
So I think part of it is having these kinds of conversations and evangelizing the concept. This all falls under smart cities, by the way. So this would be an investment that is not coming from the U.S. government and is not coming from U.S. taxpayers. It's coming from smart cities as a corporation.
Okay.
And the idea is very simply that if you believe in these ideas, then maybe shop less at Amazon and shop more at USA Enterprises, at the public option for whatever goods and services you're going to buy, right? And so we begin to allow people or empower people to vote with their dollars every single day.
Or their coins.
Yes,
exactly. Their dollars or their coins. Okay, I got it. All right, let me see. I'm on the phone call if I could. We have Jeremiah. Jeremiah, how are you, my friend? Please What's going on this evening? Go ahead. Jeremiah, you there?
Yes, sir. I want big fan, Larry.
Thank
Want
you.
to know, and maybe you've already discussed this before, but the concept of company scrip. This was something that happened back with miners and loggers and everything else. Why is it going to work this time?
Okay, can you explain how it didn't work with loggers in the
Oh,
past?
geez, that's really going back.
Can you give me an overview?
It was, oh, geez, not readily. But
Okay.
I just looked into this because it sounded very familiar. I couldn't even remember what it was called, but I know that it was a failed system where these miners basically felt trapped, and the old song 16 tons, you get a broken back and you get some company money
Right.
that you can't do anything with.
I see. So you're saying if we start doing this, then it becomes almost to a situation to where the people become trapped and they can only use the Americoin and USA Enterprises piece. And if that's a bad system, then they're screwed because they won't be able to really get into the other system. The system itself traps them.
Right.
Yes.
So the only way to get over to U.S. currency, national currency, would be to use an exchange rate.
Mhm.
They would probably be losing a lot of that currency. So eventually they're just broke.
No, I see what you're saying. It's funny. There was a I can't remember the name of the book, but I think it came out in the 80s. I think it's a Robert Heinlein book, and it was a book about the future. And in the future, all people are corporate people, right? And they all have ranks in this future, right? You're a rank 7, or you're a rank 12, or you're a rank so and so. And you didn't actually own anything. What happened was, because you were a rank so and so, you had the benefits of a rank so-and-so. So because and it was futuristic stuff, like they knew because of your eyes or whatever, you were this certain thing, and you were able to, because I'm rank 11, I get the better hotel, and I now have X dollars I can spend. I get the cool car. And then once the person made a horrible error and was fired, they basically had nothing, because all they had was what was in the system of the company. So once the person was fired from the company, they had nothing. I think this is the kind of thing you're talking about. If the system itself is bad, or I leave the system, I'm in trouble. Am I kind of right on this, Jeremiah?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
one thing I'll clarify about our plan is that our companies will operate just like any other company. So employees of the companies will be paid in US dollars, in local currency. So it's not like if you work, you're only going to get paid in Americoin. It's universal basic income. It's the income that's free. That's Americoin. But we're not about replacing the entire system and forcing people into a closed ecosystem. I think that the private sector should flourish. If we're successful, the private sector should also be successful.
So the idea is my UBI. Now everyone gets UBI, right? In this scenario, right?
Correct.
So even if I'm making a killing, because I'm such an awesome consultant and I'm making so much money, I still get my Americoin anyway, right?
Correct.
So what if I don't want my Americoin, right? I get my Americoin, but I'm doing fine, and my US dollars are fine for me, and I want my Americoin. Do I sell my Americoin for American dollars? As Jeremiah said, is there an exchange rate? Is that what happens? Does it just sit in my account, and until one day when that's my retirement when I'm 65? Is that what happens? Or do I say, Jeremiah's my buddy, I love him, I'm going to give him my Americoin? Is that what happens?
It's a great question. I think it merits much further conversation. And I think these are the kinds of things that are really helpful to elevate these kinds of potential issues or reasons. I always ask people, why is this going to fail? Why is it going to fall apart? And the more we have those conversations, the better off we'll be in designing a system that works around them. In this specific instance, if you don't need the coins, that's a question that I think as a society we need to think about. Okay, if somebody doesn't need something, do they still get it? Can they sell it? Do they get the benefit of it even though they don't need the utility of it? And
who decides need?
who decides
Right.
need. I think that's more of a collective conversation. Again, this is the blueprint, it's the starting point. Let's have the conversation. My initial reaction though is that it's our AmeriCoins are designed to cover your needs, or to make sure that you are not left without anything. So if you are living in abundance, I would think that most people would agree those AmeriCoins, that value, should be redistributed in the ecosystem. Maybe we invest it in further infrastructure. Maybe we, develop a new type of experience that, eventually you'll want to pay for. So we're putting those dollars to work as opposed to having that value just sitting in a bank account somewhere.
I guess the other thing now that I think about this, did you happen to see the movie a couple years back, maybe last year, Ready Player One?
I didn't see it, but I know of it.
Okay. In the movie, and you may like this, Jeremiah, if you're still on the line, you may like this. What happens in the movie is there's a bunch of people who basically in their life, they don't really work. Their entire goal in life is to live in a virtual reality, right? And they all have avatars, and they go out of their way to take any money they get to buy cool stuff for the avatars, right? So I'm not going to buy a new car. I'm going to buy an avatar car, right? I'm not going to buy a real house. I'm going to live like literally in a slum. I'm going to buy a cool avatar house because I spend most of my time in the reality world, right? And it made me realize that this is what could happen easily if we do any form of UBI. You have a UBI where, again, in AmeriCoin, and let's say, for example, I'm making this up completely, everyone gets 500 AmeriCoin per month. That's the amount we decided is the right amount to cover chief, right? Whatever that is. That's the amount in our fictitious scenario. Well, I want that 500 AmeriCoin. I'm Corporation Larry Sharpe. I'm not even in that ecosystem. I'm outside of it, right? But I want that because I can get it because anyone can get AmeriCoin, right? So I want it. So I want the AmeriCoin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an environment to where my goal is just getting your 500 AmeriCoin, keeping you quiet, and just giving me the AmeriCoin. So maybe I create something to where, I'll be a payday loan guy, or insert thing here where I keep getting that money, and then either I trade it in the black market, if there is a black market, or I just trade it openly, right? I start grabbing my 500 AmeriCoin from everybody, and then I just start selling it all back to make cash. Is there a realistic fear that there may be predatory people on the outside of this system who just want to get that $500?
Sure, and I think that by way of example, we could have a non-transfer policy, right? You can't transfer points, can't transfer AmeriCoins. So that's one way to get around it. Where if we're giving you a currency so that you can support yourself, you're not going to then not support yourself and work out some or gamble with it and do something else. And those are the kinds of procedures and protocols that we need to put in place. What exactly the unintended consequences are, I'm not sure yet, and that's why
that is my concern. Right, my concern is
in writing.
I will throw the money away is option one. There'll be predators who will take that money from me in some way that they'll dupe me into taking that money, right? Or the last thing is, am I creating an underclass, right? For example, am I creating, and I think we see that now with a certain class of people who are on public assistance, right? And I brought this up before. When I used to sell cars, this is 20 years ago, I used to sell Hondas. And when people would come in to buy Hondas, you could tell their social status by the questions they asked, right? People who have a higher social status would often ask questions like, what's the interest rate? How much does the car cost, right? What's the warranty on the car? People of lower social status would often just say things like, what's the monthly note? That's it. Can I pay for this thing every month with my current dollars coming in? That's it. That was the only concern they had. They didn't ask how much the car cost, whether it was a lease, whether they would have ownership at the end. Not even a question. It was just, what's the monthly note? My word becomes the same concept, right? That's a group of people who are purposefully, I think because the system, not because of them, the system purposely has made them to where they're ignorant, right? We've made them so that they're ignorant. Please don't ask these questions. Shh. Take your check, be quiet, don't ask questions. Does a UBI, in this case, run the risk of creating that second-class citizenry, right? Where all the poor people, insert whatever, how we want to decide poor, right? They use Americoin, but us cool rich people, we use dollars, right? And therefore, all the poor people only get poor people service. They get the bad service.
Right. And I think that you hit on a really important point, which is that the quality of our goods and services should be top notch. I mean, we're not going to sacrifice quality just because we're the public option. And when you change that dynamic where people are willing to pay, whether it's with US dollars or Americoin, they're willing to pay for these goods and services because of their quality. Then I think we change the dynamic of how people are treated when they're using these coins. And I also think it's worth mentioning that our existing system is inadequate, meaning we don't do enough in terms of building out a social safety net. And the result of that is people are alive, they're not dead, but they don't have all of the resources that one needs to thrive in the modern society, in modern civilization. And so our goal is that with our UBI, it's just one component. It's not the only component. It's one of a suite of solutions that collectively ensure that every person has everything they need to pursue their passion and live a dream, right? So as long as they, going back to your point about ignorance, if they have their universal basic income and they have access to free education, vocational training, vocational programming, so that they can go pursue a passion, and they have access to universal healthcare, and they have access to affordable or free housing if they need it, they're going to go and invest in their own lives. They're going to go pursue a dream. That's the goal, is to enable that.
Why do you make that leap? I got you all the way to they're going to. I think if you actually look at that argument, there's a reverse argument. And I believe there was a book, Malcolm Gladwell wrote the book. I forgot which one it was. I think it was called Davids and Goliath or something like that. And he made the argument that the reverse is true, that when people have things against them, that's when they actually thrive, right? When someone is, has a problem, it's when they actually decide to fix it and go do something. But when you give them a lot, they tend to do nothing. That was his kind of a piece of his book. I'm really paraphrasing, but I remember that concept of, you want to be in trouble, so that motivates you to go off and do good things. When you're doing too well, you don't really do much. I'll just play one more Netflix, one more season of Dexter.
I think there's a balance, and having been fortunate in my life, I would say that privileged people are still driven in many cases, in many instances. Not everyone.
Sure, of course.
Plenty of people, they get the handouts and they're perfectly fine and they live their life. And guess what? Those are great consumers. So we want them in our economy because they're going to consume our goods and services. But there are plenty of us that want more and yearn for something.
But would you yearn for something whether you got the chief or not? And I'm giving you a little bit of pushback on the idea that because what I heard, maybe it's not what you said, what I heard was if you give people chief, more of them will excel. More of them will want to excel. I'm not sure that's accurate.
I think it's fair to criticize because I generalized and I said everyone or made the leap that if you give people the ingredients to live a life, they'll go pursue a dream. And that's not 100% true. There are plenty of people, if you give them what they need, they're perfectly fine.
Yes,
they're
absolutely.
Totally fine.
Yes.
But I think on average, particularly when you talk to young people who are just starting out into the world, into the real world, they do have dreams. They do have aspirations. And what's so sad actually is that because of the state of affairs today with our economy in particular, but with our political system, with our social class structure and so on and so forth, so many people have either given up on their dream or never allowed themselves to dream. And that, the notion of the American dream, which is really at the heart of our country, of our founding, is something that we need to bring back. And that's what this is all about. It's really designed to empower the country and the world to dream again.
Good. Jeremiah, did that answer your question?
Yeah, it just seems the main concern I have is you're either going to take a percentage of my U.S. currency pay to give me this standard pay. And, so whatever happens with that happens. or it's going to be extra on top. And if it's extra on top, that means that your companies are going to be paying somebody else U.S. currency to provide me a service in exchange for my basic income.
Yes, that's true.
So then it's just going to cost a company more money, and we're already seeing companies struggle with the $15 they're having to pay now.
Oh, I see. No, that's a whole different side. So what he's saying is, thank you, Jeremiah. I'm so glad you stayed in the line. Thank you. So if I get this, the second piece, right, which he's saying, if the employees of the USA enterprise are getting U.S. dollars, but the income into the U.S. enterprise is Americoin, there's a problem. Right?
Well,
because the revenue is in Americoin, but they're paying out in U.S. dollars.
So there's revenue. So when someone buys, when we give someone Americoin and they give it back to us, that's not revenue. When you buy an Americoin, that's revenue. So we're getting U.S. dollars every time you buy an Americoin.
Okay. So there still has to be investment pieces here.
Exactly.
So we're basically bonding our way to success.
Exactly.
Okay. So is that clearer, Jeremiah? Oh, we lost him. Okay. So I hope that answered your question, Jeremiah. I hope it did. Yes. So we're bonding our way to success, and hopefully make enough profit to where we can pay back all the bonds, and then we'll be fine.
Exactly.
That's the concept. That's clearer. That because I see where Jeremiah was going with that.
So like an analogy would be a hotel or airline miles points program, right? Where they're issuing points, you're giving it back to them. When they get points back, that's not revenue.
Right. I gotcha. Okay. Or you could, if you wanted to, spend U.S. dollars or whatever, if you wanted to, because you like this service or you prefer this product or something, assuming that the USA enterprises would have quality product and or services.
And that's the goal, is that let's just take a small example with USA Studios, a film and entertainment studio. Well, we're going to be putting out entertainment content on our own streaming channel, just like any other streaming channel, just like Netflix or Hulu. It's going to be high quality content because we're going to work with the highest quality talent.
So what's it called again? USA what?
Studios?
USA Studios. So USA Studios and chill.
And chill. Yes, exactly.
I got it. Good. Okay. Perfect. We're going to USA Studios and chill. I love it. Yes.
So people will spend money for high quality content, and there's no reason why we can't rally the country and tap into our greatest resource, right? The intellectual capacity of our people to generate really great stories and really great film and entertainment that collectively generates profit on behalf of the people. There are many talented actors and writers and directors that are either not working or are working for essentially private interests, or working for individual studios that have a very small set of the population as their ownership.
So let me do two parts of that. The first one is, I feel like it's very easy to just opt out, right? Look, I don't care about this USA thing, so I'm going to go do my own thing. I feel like this is easy to opt out. Am I missing something? Or is it forced? In other words, do I have to vote? Do I have to be an owner? Do I have to say I'm a resident, therefore I'm a member? Or can I go, you know what? That's for you guys. I'm doing my own thing.
I believe in personal freedom. So if that is your prerogative, meaning you don't want to have anything to do with this, totally fine.
Okay. Second piece. Can there be more than one?
Absolutely.
Can there be USA enterprises and can there be American enterprises, right? Can there be two of them, like the National Football League and the American Football League? Can there be two corporations or two enterprises or two overarching things? And there's the Americoin and the USA coin.
Absolutely. And I think that goes back to the point you made earlier about free market systems and free trade and whatnot. At the end of the day, I hope we do a good enough job such that there's no need for a competitor. But the notion of having this free enterprise structure is that if we don't deliver on the promise, somebody else can come in and deliver on that promise. And the net effect of this entire plan is hopefully that all of our private sector companies, especially the mega corporations, the big tech companies, all of which now are almost at $1 trillion or have broken $1 trillion valuation, that they're going to elevate themselves and do a better job. They're going to take care of the citizenry and the neighborhoods in which they do business because they need to compete, because that's going to be the new standard.
right? If they don't, then we go to USA Enterprises.
Exactly.
And if USA Enterprises is weak, then we go to American Enterprises.
Exactly.
Or whatever the case may be.
Somebody else will come up with something better, and that's the beauty of the American model. That should always be the case.
This is radical.
It is a bit radical, and yet at the same time, it's really stringing together best practices from the private sector into a plan that we can all rally around. There's nothing new in this.
Okay. Of the people you've been talking about this, in general, what's the response?
The response has been really positive. I have yet, it's a working white paper, if you will. So
Sure.
As we get feedback, we'll integrate, we'll update, we'll address. And if anyone listening has questions or comments, would love to hear them.
Do you have a place they can go to go look at this?
Absolutely. It's on Twitter at Smart Cities US. It's primarily where the dialogue's taking place. But I'll send you a link after. Maybe
Sure.
you can post it. And so the feedback has been primarily one of like today, digesting. What is this about? How does it all work? How do the components work? There are some more sophisticated elements that we haven't really gotten into in terms of developing a new blockchain, which will be sort of the digital infrastructure, the digital architecture upon which all of this is built. And so I think there's a bit of an education curve. But at the end of the day, we're trying to respect and preserve personal freedom in a world that is dominated by corporations. And so it's sort of a very simple concept, which is if you can't beat them, join them. And we are joining the corporations of the world by giving the people a seat at the table.
Have you spoken to any active people who are running, people who are elected officials and about this at all?
No.
Why not?
Reached out. I'll let you know when I hear back.
They're not talking to you yet.
Correct.
Got it. No, it makes sense. This is scary for them.
I think that, it shouldn't be. It is because it's new.
Yep.
But, when you look at a plan like Bernie Sanders' $16 trillion Green New Deal, which doesn't really have I appreciate its intentions. I don't necessarily agree with 100% of the plan. You compare it to something that's much lower cost, that doesn't require us to elect anyone, doesn't require us to go through the government. It's like, well, no matter what you think of a Green New Deal that is government run and government sponsored, if you believe in that, if you believe that threat is real, you should totally jump on board with our plan because we can get started today. There's nothing blocking us from getting started, from working together to create good products and services, to sell those products and services, and to use the proceeds to invest in our infrastructure and in our people. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's about investing in the future. And you ask any young person, they feel like an entire generation has been left behind, that we haven't adequately invested in their future.
I hear that completely. And this is why I think so many people, the reason why I like the concept of this, again, I haven't checked the nuts and bolts, but is that it feels good. And that sounds silly, but it matters, right? One of the reasons why, and I was talking to the Wolf von Leyer, who he runs Students for Liberty. He's heads that organization. And I asked him about the youth. And I said, how do you get the young who tend to be very much about socialism and Bernie and, how do you get them to care about personal freedom or liberty? How do you do that? And he brought up a very important point. He said, Larry, they really aren't about socialism. That's not really what they're about. What they're about is what they believe is fair, what they believe is right and good. They've just been told their entire life the only way to get there is through government and through socialism. So they can't even imagine something that could become good or fair that isn't government or isn't socialism. When they're educated and you show them, look, you can get fair without government. Look, you can get good without government.
And the flip side, actually, which is, look, you can get really bad with government.
Yes, absolutely.
And that part, I think, is missed by most Americans. It's not just a generation of Americans. I think most Americans have not felt, what it's like to be in an authoritarian state. And you always run the danger of some form of dictatorship when you centralize that much power.
Absolutely. Yes. Agreed. I think the average youngster doesn't see that at all.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a blind spot.
They just don't see it. It's not only do they not see it, they can't even imagine it even happening. It's foreign to them, right? That's something you see in a movie, right? But that doesn't happen here because we're super cool and special.
Right.
So I think they don't see that. But there's another aspect to it is you have a generation that has in many ways been controlled, right? Compared to the younger generations, right? You hear all the time, when I was a kid, they just threw me outside and said, come back, at 6 or whatever. Well, that's an old man joke, right? It's still based on reality. Right? If you're my age, I'm over 50, right? If you're in my age range, you didn't have play dates. You didn't have organized much at all. It was really just, why are you here? Go outside and play, right? Dinner's at 6, see you then. And that was a common thing for most people in my generation. Not all, but for most of my generation, that's kind of what you did. And as we move towards younger generations, that's going away and going away and going away. And I find it even with my daughters, right? It's very hard for my daughters to just play. It's almost always a play date or a play thing or an organizational thing or with parents included. It's hard to just, go play pickup basketball or something, right? Where when I was a kid, you stood out to someone's door and said, hey, can Jimmy come out to play? That was a thing you still did. Now it's very rare. So I think a lot of people who are now under 30 grew up in that more controlled environment. And I think they're more okay with that idea of things can be structured and rules are normal versus me where I'm like, rules are because I don't get caught, right? That was it, right? That was the issue. Do you think I'm wrong here?
I think, an alternative hypothesis is that it's an entire generation that has been more coordinated.
Mm-hmm.
So before you had the cell phone, before you had texting, it was hard to schedule a meeting or an event.
Good point.
It was hard to make a plan.
Yep. Good point.
So it was easier to be like, oh, go out and play, come back at 6, right? And it's like, I don't have to worry about you for that number of hours.
Right.
Today, you're available all the time. You're accessible. So it's like, yeah, you can go from 2 to 3, but then check in with me.
Right.
Because you can. And I want that level of coordination. So I'd say that perhaps it's a social issue in terms of rules and structure. I think there may be a technological element to it as well that's driving that behavior.
I see. So maybe it's not just that the parents did or the parents couldn't.
Right. Exactly.
Right. The parents couldn't. A different environment. Oh, could be. It's interesting. So do you see your generation? You're 30?
34.
34. So I got a couple years on you. So do you see the 34? So I guess it makes you an older millennial. Is that where you are?
I think I'm the first year millennial, so I'll turn 35 next year.
Okay.
I was born in 85, so I think we're like the official starting point to the millennial generation.
Gotcha. So
the
you're
oldest.
You're like the king of the millennials. I've just decided. I've given you that title all of a sudden.
All right, sweet.
So now being king of millennials, do you think that they are going to be more apt to this plan or less? In other words, this is, for someone like me, it sounds radical. For someone like them, is it radical or is it whatevs or is it awesome?
The response has been awesome, and why not? Like, what are we missing here? Why hasn't this happened? Why aren't we doing it? And I think that's generally, it's sort of like, this is so obvious and such a great opportunity for us all to work together on what we know we all want. And go through a different channel to do it. And it's one of these things that it hasn't existed, an alternative to government that allows you to do large scale projects on a national level. There are projects that are done on a national level,
Sure.
but they're all bite-sized piecemeal. There's no overarching organization other than government that has that much clout on a national basis. Now with these mega corporations, there are different apparatuses, but at the end of the day, I think most young people, and I would include the millennial generation as part of that sort of characterization. Young people are so hungry for change and hungry for positive transformation, social justice, economic fairness. And, one of the things that is probably more important to a young person than to an older person is climate destruction, because we are going to have to live with the effects of that for the rest of our lives. So
let's go
these
down
are
that
things
road.
that I think people are thinking about.
You mentioned that. You said that this can also help with climate change.
Yeah.
Right? And the damage of climate change. Oh, did he just wave at me? Okay, no, that he wasn't waving at me. Thought someone was waving at me. So, yeah. So how does this plan do that? Right? How? This to me seems like there's a part of me, and it's going to sound horrible when I say it, but there's a part of me that just says, all right, look, we've screwed this up. Let's just accept that 20 years from now, we're losing Miami, right? There's a part of me that says that, right? Like, it's over, right? We're not going to fix this. The coast is gone, right? It's fine. We'll do like 20 years. We'll move inland. The mountains are nice, right? That there's a part of me that says, I'm joking a bit, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's a part of me that's almost given up, right? And there's a part of me that's like, no, we can still fix this. I'm torn on this, to be forward with you. There's a part of me that's like, it is what it is, man. We'll just have to figure it out. When the floods come, we're going to have to build some levees. And there's a part of me that says, no, we can still fix this. How does this deal with that issue?
So I just look at the data, right? And fortunately, we do have a lot of data, and we do have expert-driven research that is telling us that we have levers that we can be pulling. And if we have those levers and they're going away, I say let's definitely put together a plan to avoid many of the potential issues that we're going to be facing in the not too distant future. And so this plan addresses two things, which is the changes associated with automating the economy and making sure that we sustain a fair economy. And then the second piece of it is, as we're retooling, reconfiguring our economy from the bottom up and building all this new infrastructure, we're doing so with 100% green technologies. So renewable energy sources, efficient use of energy, efficient distribution of energy, and so on and so forth. So it's an opportunity for us. We have this great, 10, 20-year period where there's going to be rapid transformation of the economy due to automation. Let's also use that as an opportunity to rewire our economy for a sustainable future.
Well, there's two things in this. The first one is, I'm a student of history, and there's one advantage of having everything destroyed in your country, nation, city, town. When you rebuild it, it's all brand new, right? Everything else about having it destroyed sucks. That's the one good thing, right? And we learned this in Germany and Japan. After World War II, we bombed those countries into oblivion. And when they rebuilt everything, it was brand new. They actually they had better factories than we had. They had better technology than we had, because our stuff was from the 20s and 30s. Theirs was from the 40s and 50s. Theirs was brand new, right? They had 20, 30 years on us. So they had new everything, right? Newer skyscrapers, newer factories, all those things. Where's the destruction here, right?
Well, I think that's...
how do we rebuild, the New York City subway system, which is over 100 years old, right? Not that I want it to be destroyed, but if you're in, London, or where it was bombed, or if you're in Germany where it was bombed, you're going to have to rebuild it because it was physically destroyed. So you're going to rebuild it. We don't have that. Where's that?
Exactly. And I think, you're right. If we had a world war here in the States, the country would look very different. We would have rebuilt it very differently. You would have had some form of a centralized planning apparatus, a long-term strategic plan for the country, which we really don't have today. What we're saying is, let's do that. Let's go through that exercise. Let's act as if everything's been destroyed, because everything we have is old and obsolete. I'm generalizing, right? Not everything, but for the most part. Yep. So let's act as if our entire country has been demolished and develop a plan that's comprehensive, that covers everyone, and that is 50 years out.
So you're being even more radical now.
Sure.
I'm serious. I'm not, it's not an insult. It's just, you're now saying, look, everything sucks, scrap it. Is what you're basically saying, right?
I'm saying not everything sucks, but let's develop a plan where we can take some of the existing components. We can say, you know what? There's an amazing subway system in New York City, and we love it, and we don't want it to change. I don't think most people would say that, but
no, most wouldn't say that at all.
If they did say that, we could say that's a great best example, and we want to integrate that into the long-term 2050 vision. Well, that doesn't take away from the fact that we need a 2050 vision and we need a 2050 plan. And we're not going to get there if we don't have a vision or a plan.
All right. So I get that. So we don't have, the first problem is we don't have the bombed out things. So you're going to have to deal with that issue. The second piece is why, and this is going to sound silly, why in the world would I rebuild it with all green technology? It's a whole lot cheaper to not do it that way. And I'm a business, right? I'm a business, right? The USA Enterprises is still a company. So why would I build it with new green technology when the old technology might be cheaper to build it that way or do that thing? Why would I?
Economic wide basis, long term, it'll be much, much cheaper for us to build a clean and efficient economy.
Long term, yes. But I'm worried about this quarter. I'm a company. I'm worried about this year. I'm a company. I'm worried about making my numbers.
Well, fortunately, USA Enterprises will have a board of directors that represents us and represents what we want. Now, if we're a nation that thinks short term only and we're only concerned about the next quarter, and that's how we want our companies to operate on our behalf, then that will unfortunately be what happens. I don't think most people think that way. I think most people are like, no, this is America. Let's swing for the fences. Let's really build something that is world class. And let's do that in every single aspect of our lives. Let's have the best healthcare system. Let's have the best mass transit system that's nationwide that connects every city. But we need to start working toward a plan and start locking in that plan so that we're all working off of the same plan. I find that our politics very much resembles exactly what you're saying, which is quarter to quarter, year to year.
Well,
and we're
election
not really
cycle
thinking
to
ahead.
election cycle.
Election cycle to election
Sure.
cycle.
Yep. Absolutely. And all I care about is raising enough money to get my next election.
Yep.
I think it's very common. You see it when the people leave office. That's when they tell the truth. I'm not running again. Here's all the dirt. Right? You get all the dirt when someone's not running anymore. But when they're running, it's quiet, and I only care about my next election cycle. So I get where you're going. I worry about the climate change piece because I think you still have enough people in the country who just don't care, who just think it's fine. We're going to have some kind of magic technology to make this work when the time comes, right? I remember what movie was it? It's some World War II movie. I'm in World War II today all of a sudden. It's some World War II movie, and I think it was a movie called The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, and it was about Albert Speer. It's about him. And at the end of the war in 45 or so, Speer is trying to escape Berlin. He's trying to escape and get away. And there are citizens who know him, and they're saying, hey, what are we doing? What are we doing? He's like, we're out of here. War's over, right? And there were still people saying, but I thought Hitler had the super weapons. Yeah, the Russians are advancing. The Americans are. The war's over, right? And there are still citizens going, but what about the super weapons that are going to win us the war still? It's like April of 45, a month before Hitler kills himself, right? And the citizens are still like, but the super weapons. I worry there's a part of us who are like that.
And I get
right?
that.
That are like, no, the super weapons are going to be here any minute, right? And then the climate change is solved.
And I think that's where real leadership comes in, is being able to guide the entire country toward a future that's sustainable, even when we don't 100% see the effects of climate change or climate destruction in our day-to-day lives. And that's why it's such a hard sell in an election to make that your core issue, to make climate change.
I think the governor of Washington State found that.
Yeah.
He found that I forgot that guy's name now. I'm sorry, the governor of Washington who's running for president. I forgot whatever that guy's name is. But yeah, I don't remember either. But exactly, right? And he was the green candidate and gone, right? He had to have something cool like the Green New Deal, which now AOC has, and I mean that's working. But with that in mind, does it make sense or not in pushing this concept to scrap the climate change piece? Because that's not required for this. This idea can still work without the climate. Now, I'm not saying you should. I'm just asking a serious question, right? Is if someone were to say, I'm on board, Mike, but I don't want to talk about the climate change. Let's not talk about that. For the sake of argument, let's forget about that piece. We'll talk about that later. Are you, let's do it? Or you're like, no, that's an integral part.
It's totally part and parcel of the plan overall. So it's impossible to not acknowledge that piece of it, because when you're reconfiguring the entire economy, you got to think about, okay, where are we getting our energy from? Mm-hmm. So the most basic question is, where's the energy coming from? Oh, well, we're going to have to cultivate new sources of energy.
No, we use coal.
So that's
kidding.
No, but
Yes.
that's where the conversation sort of breaks down as well. If we're going to rebuild a sustainable economy and we're going to be doing it from the ground up, then let's go to the latest, greatest technology. And frankly, let's listen to the experts. Let's listen to the people who research and study this every single day of their lives, who are able to inform us better than we can inform ourselves about what the extrapolation looks like, what 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years out looks like on the basis of the actions we take today. And so, going back to the very first topic that we were talking about in terms of how do you design spaces, places around people, I think this is a perfect example. Let's listen to the researchers, let's listen to the experts, and if they're telling us that fossil fuels are going to destroy our planet, well, that's an existential crisis. That's one that's worth planning around.
But there is a natural resistance, I think, in America to experts. There's a natural the experts said this and they were wrong, or the experts said that and they were wrong. And sometimes that's true. Experts are humans. They're wrong also, right? But I think there is an issue of once you start going to experts, you have the idea of now the elites run things, right? These are the elites. They run things, right? This is the fear that a lot of Americans already have, right? The East Coast or West Coast elites run everything, right? That's the worry you hear often. One of the reasons why Trump was able to be so popular in the Midwest, right? One of the many reasons, but one of the reasons was the coastal elites run everything, right? So it's their fault, right? That's why it's all bad.
I think that's a really fair point. And it's one of those things that culturally we're going to need to change. We're going to need to be less skeptical of each other and more understanding of each other. And I think for a variety of reasons, I've grown up in a completely competitive culture where capitalism has turned into competition in every way, shape, and form. From the moment I was born, I was part of this game. Mm-hmm. And it's you got to work to make a living. We all are part of the same game.
Sure.
When we start to change the culture and we say, look, there's no more game. You can afford to live your life without working. You're going to be able to get food and essentials and to have a home and to have healthcare without having to work. Well, then people are going to be, I think, more willing to listen to the other side, more understanding of different points of view, and more willing to listen to people that actually study these things as opposed to, just manufacture ideas or manufacture statements on the daily.
So, the way you just put that, what I heard was, I'm going to give you a bunch of stuff. So listen to me. Is that accurate, or did I hear that wrong?
If you heard it that way, I misspoke. I think that we are
because if I'm getting my living from USA Enterprises, mm-hmm. I guess the question is, do I also get my living from the government too? Right? Do I also get my public assistance check also on my EBT? Do I get that also? I don't know if I do or not, but that. But then does that mean that whatever USA Enterprises says, I go, yes, boss?
So
do I do that?
I think that when I'm talking, it's not me as a person. I am just one person mm-hmm. within smart cities.
Sure.
But the goal is that smart cities is representative of the public, that we are electing a board. So don't listen to me, Michael, but if the board that we've all collectively elected has done the research and they've prepared documentation and it's been reviewed and released and published, I would say yes. I think as a country, we need to be able to believe again in mm-hmm. each other and believe in people who are spending their waking days studying these things.
Okay, I get it. All right. Well, look, guys, if you like what you hear, if you think it's great and awesome, do us a favor. Please support us. Head over to patreon.com/Sharpe Way and give what you can give. If you can do $9, if you can do 40-something bucks, awesome. If you're in a spot where you can do $100, do it. This is what I'm trying to achieve, giving us some good conversations and hopefully drawing more people over to the Liberty side. So doing that too, of course. Yes, absolutely bringing more and more people over. So do that if you can. In addition, please like us, follow us, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of them. The Sharpe Way. It's right. I want to say, Michael, anything you want to say before we end this?
No, thank you so much for having me on. And if anyone's interested in reading about smart cities, we'll publish a link to the white paper.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Guys, I want to say thank you so much for this evening. I'm very happy that you were able to join me. I will see you all next week here on The Sharpe Way.